It was the dead of night on January 3rd, 2026. In Caracas, Venezuela's capital city, a surprising event began. U.S. military forces moved swiftly. They stormed the presidential residence, the home of President Nicolas Maduro. The air filled with the loud sounds of helicopters. There were also explosions and shouting as soldiers moved inside the building. The mission was clear: to capture the sitting head of state, President Nicolas Maduro, and his wife. This event was truly unique. It was the first time in many decades that a world leader was forcibly taken by a foreign power. President Donald Trump of the United States had given the order for this important mission, which was called Operation Absolute Resolve. As the U.S. forces secured the residence, the chaos slowly died down. Soon after, the soldiers found President Maduro and his wife. They were quickly hooded and their hands were tied. They were then put onto a military helicopter. The aircraft lifted off, taking them away from their country under the cover of darkness. Their future, and the future of Venezuela, was now uncertain. The suddenness of the attack left many in shock. It changed everything very fast. For the first time in many years, a powerful nation had simply seized the leader of another country. This act challenged old ideas about how countries should treat each other. This event made people around the world ask big questions. Was this act a fight for justice against a leader many called a dictator?
Or was it a dangerous breaking of international rules, a country acting alone against another? As the helicopter flew into the night, carrying President Maduro away as a prisoner, the world waited. Everyone wanted to know where the United States was taking him and what they planned to do next. The whole world watched, holding its breath. 2. The Secret Plan. Operation Absolute Resolute was the code name for this secret plan. It began many months before, in August of 2025. The CIA worked hard, putting a hidden team inside Venezuela. Their job was to watch President Nicolas Maduro very closely. General Dan Kane, a top military leader, later spoke about how they learned everything: where Maduro lived, how he moved, what he ate, and even what pets he had. A secret source, someone working inside the Venezuelan government, helped the CIA find out Maduro's exact location and daily schedule. This person's reasons for helping were a big secret, to be known later. The U.S. military also prepared in special ways. They built exact copies of Maduro's residence to practice the capture again and again, ensuring every detail was covered. They used special computer programs to disable air defenses and turn off lights in Caracas, plunging much of the city into darkness. Over 150 aircraft were ready, launching from 20 bases across the Western Hemisphere.
This included fighter jets, bombers, and surveillance planes, showing the immense scale of the force. The plan faced many problems and had to wait. Bad weather was one reason. Also, President Donald Trump had given the first approval in late December, but troops waited through the holidays. One opportunity was put on hold when President Trump decided to strike Nigeria on Christmas Day. Finally, on January 2 at 10:46 p.m., President Trump gave the final order: go. Elite Delta Force soldiers flew in helicopters. They flew very low, only 100 feet above the water, to avoid being seen.
At about 2 a.m. in Caracas, the helicopters arrived at Maduro's large army base, Fuerte Tiuna. As they descended on his compound, people on the ground began shooting heavily. One helicopter was struck, but it could still fly. The seemingly perfect plan had just met its first violent obstacle. 3. The price of power. After the military operation, different stories came out about what happened. United States officials said the mission was clean. General Dan Kane stated that no one died and only a few American soldiers had small injuries. President Donald Trump also said that a couple of soldiers were hit but were quickly getting better. The U.S. picture was one of success with very little trouble. However, officials from Venezuela and Cuba painted a very different picture of the cost. They said many of their soldiers died in the attacks.
Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez reported that United States combat helicopters fired rockets and missiles into cities. Initial reports said at least 24 Venezuelan security officers were killed. Cuba's government reported that 32 members of their military and intelligence agencies who were in Venezuela also died. These numbers grew. Later reports suggested the total death toll for Venezuelan and Cuban military personnel reached at least 55. Venezuela's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, also stated that innocent people had died, though she did not give exact numbers. Some reports even suggested the total death toll could be as high as 80, including civilians. Evidence like satellite pictures showed clear signs of damage. Destroyed warehouses at La Guaira port, burned vehicles, and damaged anti-aircraft systems were visible. Facilities at Higuerote Airport were also left in ruins. The scale of these strikes showed large military attack. The big difference between the U.S. story and the reports from the ground created a tense mystery. Who was telling the truth? What was the real price of this operation, with innocent civilians caught in the middle of the fighting? As the smoke slowly cleared in Caracas, the focus of the world shifted far away. Thousands of miles from the troubled city, a new scene was set. In a quiet, formal federal courthouse in New York City, Nicolás Maduro was soon to face his accusers.
The legal battle was about to begin. 4. A president in chains. The setting changed to the Daniel Patrick Moynihan United States Courthouse in Manhattan. On January 5, 2026, a truly unusual sight unfolded. Nicolás Maduro, who had been a president, was led into a U.S. courtroom. He no longer wore the important suits of a leader. Instead, he was dressed in a simple blue jail uniform. His wife, Cilia Flores, was also present, by his side. The air in the room was thick with tension. Every person felt the weight of the moment. They stood before U.S. District Judge Alvin Hellerstein. The judge began the hearing, which lasted about 30 minutes. When Judge Hellerstein asked Maduro to enter a plea, the former president spoke directly. He declared in Spanish, "I am the president of Venezuela. I consider myself a prisoner of war. I was captured at my home in Caracas. I am innocent. I am not guilty. I am a decent man." This defiant speech filled the courtroom. Following his powerful statement, both Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, formally pleaded not guilty to all the charges against them. The indictment listed serious accusations, including narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and charges related to weapons possession. Legal teams had already formed. Barry Joel Pollock represented Maduro, ready to challenge the prosecution. Mark Donnelly was there to defend Flores, promising a long legal battle. Judge Hellerstein then issued his order. He stated that both defendants must remain in custody. This decision cemented Maduro's new, stark reality. He was no longer a leader making decisions in a grand palace. He was a defendant, held in a prison cell, far from his country. The next court date was scheduled for March 17, 2026. As Maduro was escorted out of the courtroom, he turned and offered a wave to the observers. The world was left to think about what had just happened. This historic moment brought many questions to mind. What were the specific charges that led to a head of state being brought to this point? And in a U.S. court, would these claims truly hold up against a leader who declared himself a prisoner of war? The answers would shape much more than just one man's fate. 5. The Cartel of the Suns. The legal fight ahead for Nicolás Maduro started in the New York courthouse. He faced 4 main charges. These were narco-terrorism, bringing cocaine into the country, and having illegal weapons. If found guilty, he could spend his life in prison. The prosecution's main point was a group called the Cartel of the Suns. They said this was a network of government officials in Venezuela who used their power to move drugs. Prosecutors claimed Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, helped drug traffickers. They said this system was not a normal criminal group, but a way corrupt officials used the state for drug business. This case brought up memories of another leader, Manuel Noriega from Panama. He was captured by U.S. forces and charged with drug crimes 36 years ago. Maduro's capture happened on the same day Noriega gave up, linking the two events in history. Maduro's lawyers planned to use a strong legal argument, head of state immunity. This rule usually means a country's leader cannot be charged in another country's courts. It protects leaders so they can do their job without fear of being arrested in other nations. However, the U.S. government had a different view. It stopped seeing Maduro as Venezuela's true president in 2019. Also, U.S. courts often let cases go forward even if the person was brought to court in an unusual way. This legal idea means that how someone is arrested might not stop the trial from happening. Legal experts said that Maduro's chances with this defense were not strong. Past cases, like Noriega's, show that U.S. courts often support the president's foreign policy actions. They believe it will be very hard for Maduro's lawyers to win using these arguments. But even if the court case can move forward, a much bigger question remained. Was the entire military operation that brought Maduro to New York a serious breaking of international law? Many across the world said it was. A 6th section, a world divided. The capture of Venezuela's President Maduro started a big storm around the world.
Countries everywhere had very different ideas, showing a clear split. Many nations quickly spoke out against the U.S. action. Latin American leaders were very angry. Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, called the bombings in Venezuela an unacceptable line against its sovereignty. Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, condemned it as aggression. Cuba's president, Miguel Díaz-Canel, joined protests, calling the operation a criminal attack. Mexico also called for dialogue instead of military action. Russia and China also strongly condemned the capture, calling it a severe breach of international law and a forceful act. Iran's leader spoke against outside forces trying to control nations. However, the United States' European allies gave cautious answers. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer wanted facts, saying he was happy for the fall of Maduro, but unsure about the method. France's President Emmanuel Macron spoke about a peaceful transition. Germany called the operation's legality complex. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez disagreed, saying it broke international law. These countries worried about the U.S. acting alone, fearing it would set a risky example for global order. Some governments did support the U.S. action. Right-wing leaders in Latin America, like Argentina's President Javier Milei, called Maduro's capture a victory for freedom. El Salvador, Ecuador, and Chile supported it, seeing it as a blow to his leadership.
Close U.S. allies, Israel and Ukraine, praised the developments. In the United States, opinions were split. Republican lawmakers supported the operation, but some, like Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, worried about U.S. control of other nations. Former Vice President Kamala Harris called President Donald Trump's actions wrong. But many Venezuelans living outside their country were happy. In cities like Miami and Santiago, Chile, they celebrated, waving flags and shouting for freedom. They felt this was the moment they had waited for. Outside President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, Venezuelan Americans also celebrated. Yet pro-Maduro protests also happened in Caracas and other cities, showing the deep division. This event broke old friendships and challenged global order. While the world debated global rules and international law, a new open space for power appeared in Caracas. A new leader was now ready to take charge. 7. The fight for Caracas. Venezuela was now without its president. After Nicolás Maduro's capture, the country faced a new time of trouble. On January 4, Delcy Rodriguez became the interim president. She was Maduro's vice president and a strong leader. The military gave her their full support. Rodriguez had a long history in government. She was known for helping Venezuela's economy in hard times. But she also had sanctions from the U.S. government. This showed she was a complex figure. Her new government sent mixed messages. Publicly, President Rodriguez said the U.S. action was wrong. She called for Maduro's release. But President Trump claimed she had privately offered to cooperate with the U.S. Later, she posted online about working together with the U.S. for shared growth. However, President Trump quickly made new threats. He said if Rodriguez did not give the U.S. total access to Venezuela's oil, she would face big problems. Venezuela has a lot of oil, and the U.S. wanted to control it. Meanwhile, Maria Corina Machado, an important opposition leader, was not in Venezuela. She had won the Nobel Peace Prize in December 2025 and was out of the country. Many wondered if she could return to challenge the new government. President Trump had said she did not have enough support inside Venezuela. The country was in a very dangerous situation. Gunfire was heard in Caracas. The new government ordered police to search for anyone who helped the U.S. attack. This meant more trouble for people who disagreed with the government. With a new leader, threats from the U.S., and an important opposition leader far away, Venezuela's future was not clear. The fight for its path was just starting. This event also made the whole world worry about how countries would act towards each other in the future. 8. The New World Order. The capture of President Nicolás Maduro changed many things. It was a big event, like when Manuel Noriega of Panama was captured years ago. But this time, it felt different and more dangerous for the world. It showed that one country
could take another country's leader by force. This had not happened for a long time. It made people think about what comes next. 3 main battles began after Maduro's capture. First, there was the legal case in New York City. Maduro was in a U.S. court. He said he was innocent. Lawyers would argue about whether a president can be put on trial by another country. This was a new and difficult legal problem. Second, there was a fight for power in Venezuela. After Maduro was gone, his vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, became the new leader. But the country was still unstable. Many people worried about civil unrest or more problems with foreign powers. Third, the event caused a big argument around the world. Countries debated the rules of international law. The United Nations Charter says countries should not use force against each other. Maduro's capture went against this rule. Some countries, like Russia and China, were very upset. They said it was a bad action that could lead to more violence in the world. Even some U.S. friends in Europe were worried, though they did not like Maduro. This event was a turning point. It made people question the peace rules made after the Second World War. These rules were meant to stop big wars. Now, some people celebrated Maduro's removal. They saw it as justice for a bad leader. But many others were very alarmed.
They feared that countries could now attack others more easily. They worried that a nation's independence might not be safe anymore. The world must now decide. Does getting rid of a bad leader make it okay to break international laws? What kind of world will this create for everyone?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.